Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Quick Tools with Jamie. This is one of the Wordfast seminars put together for the ATA conference this year. So one of the things I wanted to let you know right away is this is focused on Wordfast Pro. However, just as an interesting point, I wanted to show you how to set up a Wordfast Anywhere translation memory on the cloud that could then be shared with Wordfast Pro. So if you do this, you would be able to use it yourself from anywhere, but also you would be able to share it with colleagues. Okay, so for the purposes of what I'm doing, I'm going to go ahead and start right here. And let me close this so you can see how I got here. So I logged into Wordfast Anywhere, and then I clicked on TMs and glossaries up at the top here in the pane. And then I'm going to click Create. And for today, my source language is just going to be English. And because my other language is French, I will put in French, although I usually translate from French to English. And when you create a TM on Wordfast Anywhere, you can leave it unnamed or you can give it a specific name. I will go ahead and name this training, and we'll click Save. Okay, so now I have an English to French empty translation memory sitting on Wordfast Anywhere. If I then click on Manage Sharing, I can share to applications like Wordfast Pro. So I'm going to click Add on the bottom here. Click on TMs because you could share any number of different TMs that you might have on Anywhere. Okay, once I have that ready, I'll just click Save. And then down at the bottom now, you'll see that it has given me an API key. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. I'm going to copy the key. All right. And that's as far as we need to go in Anywhere. Once I have a memory sitting there and I've created a key and I've copied it out, I can use that in Wordfast Pro. Okay, so you're probably familiar with the main Wordfast Pro screen. I've completely emptied it so that there's not clutter in the way during this presentation. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on Quick Tools. So I don't know how many people have already used Quick Tools before, or if you're familiar with it or not. Or if you know about some of the secret things that are in there. They're not really secret, but to get there, you're going to click on what looks like Tools over on the left toolbar. There's also probably a little known piece of information about the toolbar on the left in Wordfast Pro, which is that if you like keyboard shortcuts, you can get through the various items on the left toolbar by pressing Control 1, 2, 3, etc. So right now I'm in number 2, which is the home screen. If I press Control 5, that should take me into Quick Tools, and there we go. So again, if I wanted to use those shortcuts, I could press Control 1 at any time to go back to the home, Control 5 to come back here, etc. But that's just a little side note. So the first thing you'll want to do, if you're going to do anything in Quick Tools, it's useful to have a translation memory, but you don't necessarily have to have one. You can do a lot of things in here that don't require a memory. But one of the reasons it's also called Quick Tools is that you don't need to have a project. So I didn't set up any projects. As you saw, my main screen was clean. There was nothing in there. However, I can still do things in here. I'm going to start by going up to translation memories on the top right. I'm under analysis right now. That's where we're going to focus first. And I'm going to click this button, which allows me to add a Wordfast Anywhere server. And remember that key that we copied from here. We're going to paste that now into Wordfast Pro. And you have to give it some kind of name here. So we'll just call it training, and I'll put Wordfast Anywhere since I know where it came from. And we'll click OK. All right, so now after doing that, you should see in the Wordfast Pro Quick Tools Translation Memories pane, the new Wordfast Anywhere TM that you've added. You can put any translation memory you want that's part of Wordfast Pro in here. It doesn't have to be on Wordfast Anywhere. Again, you can create this locally, do whatever you want. There's even a button here where you can create a new memory and choose your languages and a location. You can command all of that from here. I'm going to go ahead and activate that TM. whenever you activate a TM here, it's going to force the languages that you have. So I have English and French as that TM. Notice that when I turn it off here under Analyze Without TM, I can choose whatever languages I want. But as soon as I click on a specific TM up here, it's going to force that off because I have to use these languages. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If I were not using a TM at all, I could just specify the languages and then throw whatever files I want in there and do certain things with them. To start out with, when you analyze, of course, you want statistics, and that's great. But there's some other things that you can do when you're in this pane. You can pre-translate. So by default, pre-translation is turned on, and it's set to 75% for fuzzy matches. Depending on how full your translation memory is, you might want to change that percentage. Mine doesn't have anything, so that's really not relevant right now, but that's something you might want to play with. One feature, though, that some of you may not know about is you can choose here what to do if there's nothing in the translation memory. So one thing you can do is copy the source. Some people really enjoy having the source copied into the target, which they then overwrite. You can copy only the tags. So if you wanted just segments that have tags in them, you're just going to copy the tags over to the target. You can do that. But one that I think is really interesting is you can have your primary machine translation pump a bunch of stuff into a file by doing that. So if I were to bring a file in right now and I have MT set up, I should be able to do that. I'm going to attempt to do this right now just to show you how it works using World Lingo because it's free. I can't guarantee that it will fully function though, because when you're in a big meeting like this, sometimes internet is not as robust as it should be. So I'm going to leave that turned on. So what we're doing is we're going to bring some files in, we're going to analyze them, and then anytime there's no translation, it's going to fill it with machine translation. Finally, down at the bottom, you have report settings. So you can get different kinds of reports out of Wordfast Pro depending on what you're interested in. Typically, it'll just show you a temporary report summary. It'll appear as a window, and once you close that, it's gone forever. If you want to have a report to keep, you can click on this drop-down and choose a format. So HTML will give you a page you can open in your browser. PDF, obviously, is a PDF file. Excel will open Excel. One of the things about those file types, though, is they're pre-formatted. So if you want to do something else with the statistics, it's not as easy to do. If you choose CSV, however, which is comma-separated values, that's a database format, and you can use that to move your statistics elsewhere. So if you wanted to do a bunch of number crunching in Excel or some other kind of database software, you could totally use that. I'm going to come back up. Let's just leave it in, let's do it in Excel. Okay, we're going to get this set up now. I'm going to go into my settings. So over on the left side, I'm going to click on the settings bar. I am going to choose machine translation. I am going to choose enable World Lingo, again, because this is a free one, does not require any kind of keys. And then I will click OK. All right, I have some files that I've set up, and we're going to take the smallest one, the one with the fewest stuff in it. Actually, I think that might be the Word file, so I'm going to grab that one first. I'm going to do the MT thing on a single file so that I don't overload the internet. Okay, so I drug a Microsoft Word file straight in here. I have it set up to use primary machine translation, give me an Excel analysis file. The only other option up here is what do I want to do during the analysis? Do I want it to create TXLIF files? And those are the bilingual files that Wordfast Pro uses. If you just want statistics, you say do not create. Of course, if you do that, machine translation is useless. You can put them inside a subfolder that's close to the folder that you got the source file from, or you can just put them next to the source file, which is what I'm going to do. And then we are off. I'm going to just click this Analyze Files button on the bottom here, and we'll see what happens. So typically, it's going to run a certain percentage, and then it might seem to hang for a little while. And that's the part where it's submitting all of those segments to the machine translation and getting the translations back from it. So that's always going to take a bit. And again, that's why I did not put all 3 files in at once. You can totally do that. You can put in 20 files and run them through your MT, but you just need to make sure that your MT provider has the capacity to serve you that many translations in a batch. Most paid providers are going to be able to do that without any issues. Okay, and while we're waiting on that, I'm just going to go ahead and show you what this file looks like in Word. Okay, I just borrowed some Microsoft templates. These are the ones that give you an idea of what you can do with Microsoft Word. I also have a couple more examples here. There's a PowerPoint. Same kind of idea. It's got some interesting stuff in it, and we'll use this in a bit to see how Wordfast does certain things. And then we also have the fun Excel provided by Wordfast also. And the Excel one's going to be interesting because we're going to see in a bit what happens when we pseudo translate. So this little button here that says let's go is going to be an interesting challenge. So getting back to Wordfast now. It says there were some errors during analysis. My guess is that it timed out doing machine translation hits. But that's okay because we can still look in there and see what happened. If we go back to our file list now, you'll see that there's a Microsoft Word txlib file. If we want to look at it, we can simply go into the home area here, and we don't have to create a project. In fact, you can just drag a txlib straight in here, and when you do that, you have an option to open in quick project. Word of warning, I've seen some people do this. This message pops up, they click remember this choice, and then they click open in new project. Once you've done that, you've told Wordfast, every time I drag a txlib into the home area, make a new project. I don't recommend you choose that option unless that's what you always want to do. If you've done that and you want to change your mind, you actually have to go into the settings and uncheck a box so that this message will pop up again. I'm going to choose open in quick project. So it creates this thing called quick project, which is actually not a real project. It's just there for the purposes of opening this. And you can see on the left here, I did get machine translation, and it probably cut off partway through the file here. I'm just kind of scrolling down. Yeah, it didn't quite get to the end, but it serves our purpose. We have machine translation in there. And with our real-time preview, you can see that we already can benefit from the machine translation showing in terms of what the target text is going to look like. So that's great. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and dump that back off. As soon as you close a quick project, by the way, it evaporates into thin air because the sole purpose of it is to open the file, work on it temporarily there, and then come back out. It's not meant to be a permanent situation. So going back to Quick Tools now, I'm going to go ahead and change this up. So I'm going to get rid of the primary MT for now. We'll just say we're going to do maintain existing target, clear this out. We're going to come back to analysis in just a bit. I'm actually going to jump you to pseudo translation because this is really interesting. But just before doing that, sorry to jump around so much, I'm going to open the analysis that we produced with Wordfast as an Excel spreadsheet. So it shows you the file that we analyzed and what the statistics are. It's not showing anything for translation because we machine translated, remember, so that doesn't count. But that's basically what you get. And the statistics appeared right next to the source files, just like the txlib did. I'm going to go ahead and dump those for now, though. I don't need them for this. And I got to close all my files back out so they're not locked. Alrighty. So one area of Wordfast that's quite interesting is pseudo translation. If you have files, especially things like PowerPoint, where text may not necessarily fit once you translate, This is a good way to get an idea of that before you ever start doing anything. So if a client sent you a file and said, hey, can you translate this? And it's a PowerPoint, and you wanted to see, is this going to take me extra time beyond just translating? This is a good way to find that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all three files, just as source files. I'm going to drag them into the pseudo translate pane. And then on the right, I'm going to specify my source language. And for the purposes of this, again, I'm just going to choose French. Now, I don't know how many of you work with French, but French tends to expand in terms of compared with English. So, English may have 10 characters and French would have 15, for example. So when you have an expanding text situation, that's where pseudo translation can be very helpful. I'm going to tell it to create a pseudo translated target file. So it's actually going to produce a target Excel, PowerPoint, and Word for me with pseudo translation. If this is something you're not familiar with at all it really does is pre-fill a quote-unquote translated text with characters that are kind of junk characters, if you will, and they take space up as if they're a language. It also uses a bunch of accented junk characters just to mimic what that would look like. So with French, for example, we'll get a lot of the accents that French uses. Okay, I'm going to place the pseudo-translated files in the original files location. So it's just going to appear in the folder that I drug these from. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and pop over to the folder. And as you can see, I'm getting TX lifts appearing there. Because Wordfast has to use that as an intermediate stage. It creates the TX lifts in the background, and then it's generating the target pseudo-translated files. Okay, so here we go. So the one that has the number 1 on the end of it, that's the pseudo-translated file. I'm going to open the Excel. Okay, and you can see it looks kind of strange, but it's using characters with accents that may or may not appear in the particular language. But that's partially also to make sure that the character set is going to display correctly, because you may be using a file type where you would get boxes or other weird characters instead of the accented characters that you need. In this case, I'm most interested in text expansion. So if you look down here, it only shows the first part of the word that I had in English. So let me open the English version up. It says, let's go. And when you click on the button, it takes you to the second sheet of the Excel. So I'm going to go back to the start again. In the pseudo translated one, what this is telling me is that if I translate let's go into French, chances are high it's not going to fit the button. So that's good to know. And that would give me some information in terms of how this is going to work once it's translated fully. And you can kind of click through and just see how does this look. I see here that there's some little button images that are kind of not working very well. There's definitely some text crowding happening here. Again, more text crowding. So this is a great preview of what's going to happen. I think it's worth looking also at the PowerPoint. Okay, let's open up the pseudo-translated version. All right, bullet points in PowerPoints can be quite tricky when you pseudo-translate. Let me scroll down here because I know I looked at this before, this one. This one creates a bit of a challenge because this image here is placed specifically for the English text. So now that it's an expanded text, it's not in the correct position. It would require moving later in order for it to work correctly. Secondly, the text is also expanding onto this image over here. Well, I should say under the image. So that's something else that would need to be dealt with. And because the text flows onto a second line, it's also pushing these 3 points below their images. So if you look at the English one, you can see the links line up with these arrow images. And in the pseudo-translated one, they don't. So this is all very good information, and there's a couple ways you can handle this. You can either translate in Wordfast with the live preview on and try to make it fit there, or you could just translate as you see fit and export it out and do all the adjusting after you're done. It's kind of up to you how you want to do it. Doing it while you're translating is probably a better idea. But in any case, the point of this is to give me information. So now if my client said, how long would it take you to translate this? I would probably not just use the word count. I would also be taking into consideration any kind of adjustments I would have to make so that this will look the way it needs to look. That's extra time on my side. It's not just translating. So it's a very worthwhile thing to do. All right. I also pseudo translated the Word file, but I think we've gotten the idea here, so I'm not going to open that just yet. So again, this is a very easy thing to do. And after you've done it, you actually have TX lifts, and these can be either used or they can be thrown out. They're just there as a way to get to the target. I'm going to go ahead and use them for right now, though, because I think they're helpful for some of these other exercises I want to do. So let's pop back for a second. I want to take you to this screen. So there's another feature in Quick Tools called Extract Uniques. One of the things about extracting uniques is it helps you deal with repetitions. There's a couple different ways you can deal with that problem. You can come here to extract uniques, and I'll explain how that works in just a second. But you can also deal with them just while you're regular translating with autopropagate. If you extract uniques, it gets rid of the need for autopropagate, because what it's going to do is pull out one version of each segment. So if I have a segment with 5 repetitions, it only pulls one of those out because it's unique. It doesn't need the other 4. And if you have a doc or set of docs that have a lot of repetitions in them, you can put them all in here and extract just the unique segments out. And that can save you, in theory, a lot of time of having to worry about all these repetitions. So let's just try this for a minute and see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and grab this Excel file here. Sorry. Okay, it's the Excel TX lif. I'm putting it in here. I'm going to leave this default for a minute because there's only one file in here. I'm going to place the unique file next to the current TX lif. And down on the bottom it says extract segments that occur at least one time. If you change that to anything but one, you're in some ways changing the purpose of this tool. Extract uniques means pull out one version of each thing. You can, however, use it a different way. You can say pull out segments that have 5 repetitions or more. That's an interesting way to look at it too, because you can see, how many segments have a lot of repetitions. Again, you would have to sort of play with this to see how this can work for you, but setting it on 1 is the most typical way to use this. So I'm going to click Extract Uniques, and that should show up in the same folder that we have here under the Excel once it's done. Just doing a little crunching to figure out what it needs to pull out. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is if you make one of these files, this is a separate TX lif it's making. It's no longer the original file, so you would then lose the benefit of a live preview. In terms of Excel right now, that wouldn't matter because there's not a live preview for Excel, but there's one coming in a future release of Wordfast Pro. You can see here, extracted 1,145 segments out of 2,058. So almost half of the file is repetitions. So if I were to translate just this 1,145 segments as a separate task, I can then use the populate uniques feature here to put those back into the file. And that's a really interesting thing to do. Let me just show you what this looks like. Okay, so here's the file we just created. I'm going to open the original, which is this one, and the uniques, and we're going to compare them a little bit. So I'm doing that in Quick Project again. All right. So we know that this one has half the number of segments in it, but I would suggest that if we scrolled in here, you would probably see very quickly that there's a lot more text also. So it's just a much smaller thing to deal with. But what we could do is we could translate in here the uniques. And when you're finished with that, over in Quick Tools, you use Populate Uniques. You're going to drag the translated unique file. I didn't do anything with this, so it's not translated. I'm going to put it in here, though. And then you're going to put the original txlif, which was this one. Okay? When you do that, you can take all of the translations you did in this extracted file, and it's going to put them into this file. This works even on all the repetitions, and that's the point. So if the word, let's see here, if the word start occurred 10 times throughout the file, translating it once in uniques and then populating the other file, all 10 start segments will get populated with the translation. So here, there's just one thing to be careful of. I'm not going to populate because I didn't do anything, but if you're going to go through with this, it's a good idea to be careful when you run the populate. So you can populate the txlif in a new folder, and you can give it a special name, and then you can choose where to put it exactly. Do you want it next to the original txlif, or do you want it somewhere else? Because we're creating a proliferation of files, I would recommend maybe putting it somewhere else. So you could choose a specific location for it. You could also make the populated txlif in a new folder. This just ensures that you don't do something goofy and accidentally overwrite the wrong txlif. So you just want to be careful how you do that. And then once you click on that, it's going to create that final one for you. Okay? So we don't need to go any farther with that. We can still do some fun stuff, though, with the files we already have before we go any farther. Let's go back into the project here. I'm going to close this out for a minute. And we were talking about dealing with repetitions. So another thing you can do, and this is outside of Quick Tools, but we have these txlifs that we created with the pseudo translation. If we assume that those three files, even though they're completely different formats, have related content, one of the things you can do is you can leave all three of these open at the same time. And if you have autopropagate set correctly, let me go in here to the settings. So here you have enable autopropagation across all open files. If that's turned on and you translate an item in the PowerPoint here, let's say you translate this line. If you translate that and you accept it, the other two files, the Excel and the Word, will also get scanned for that. And if it exists in either of those two files, the translation also goes into those at the same time. So that's kind of a way to deal with repetitions also, rather than making a uniques file. But you can also do one more thing. If you're in this view, you can select all the files that you have available to you, and you can use this button, Chain Files. So if I click Chain Files, what it's doing is it's essentially taking all three files and placing them one after another into a single file view. So now instead of 3 tabs at the top, I have a single tab called Chained Files 1. And this enables me to work on it as if it's a single file And again, take advantage of auto-propagation throughout the 3 files. So if extra credit appears in the PowerPoint and the Excel, then it will get translated once and it will be spread throughout the 3 files. So chain files is another way to deal with these repetitions. So again, you have extract uniques, where you can work on it as a targeted thing, or you can forego that and you can come in here and you can chain your files together so that it acts as one file. Or you can open all 3 files at the same time, have 3 tabs open, but you have to make sure that in settings under auto-propagate, you have enable auto-propagation across all open files. And doing that also enables you to knock out all those repetitions. So there's different ways to do that. I just wanted to point out too that if you are in the chain files view, this does not permanently stick the files together. As soon as you close this view, they are back to being completely separate files. So it's never permanently joining them together. You don't have to worry later in your project about, oh no, my files are stuck together. How do I get them apart? Basically, you close the chain file and your files are separate. So there's not really a problem in that regard. Okay, so I'm going to jump back over to our quick tools here. So another thing I wanted to look at is the advanced tab here. And there's a couple of sort of lesser known items here. One of them is a quite simple one. It's swap the source and the target. So you can take an existing TXLIF file, and let me give you a use case for this. In this case, I'm an English to French translator, but I have a colleague who translates French to English. So if I gave my colleague my translated Excel TXLIF file, my colleague can open it here, English to French, and then they can choose to swap it. So these are 3 different things here. This top section, the middle section, and the bottom section, those are different features. We're talking about the swap source and target advanced feature. So I'm just going to click on swap. Okay, successfully finished swapping one file. If I go back here now, you'll see that I have this unique one, which we did earlier. That's a totally different thing, but I have a swapped one. So the swapped one means that it now runs French to English. Okay, instead of English to French, it's French to English. So my colleague could open a brand new translation memory that's French to English. They could then open this swapped file and they can clean that up into their memory, and it will be in French to English as opposed to English to French. So it's a simple way of kind of sharing information where you can flip the language direction. Okay, so that's an interesting thing you can do. Another thing you can do is if you're working with a bunch of different colleagues and you have a very large single file, this happens sometimes. Imagine that it's some sort of manual, it's written in Microsoft Word, it's 300 pages. It has a short turnaround time, and you need 2 or 3 colleagues to help you get it done. So one thing you can do, let's pretend that this Microsoft Word doc here is a manual. It's actually very short, but we'll just pretend it's long. I'm going to drop it in here. So I already have the TXLIF file. Again, almost everything we're doing here, it's either straight up source files that have never been touched, or it's the TXLIFs that are based on those. So on the right here under split merge TXLIF, I'm going to place split files in the original location. So the place that I just drugged this file from, that's where they're going. And I have some options. Split after 2 TUs. So this is a strange one. If you know the total number of TUs, and I do up here, let me just change the size of this. It looks like it's 115, yeah. So segments and TUs in terms of numbers are basically the same. The difference is that a TU is source and target, but it's the same line. A segment is just the source part, but either way, 115. So if I wanted to split this based on those, divided amongst 4 people or whatever, I can put a number here, but I have to specify. So I'd have to do some math. 115 divided by 4 people, that's something like 30. So I could say 30 TUs approximately for each person. So I could do that. It's a little bit more difficult. I can also split it into a specific number of parts. So if we're talking about number of translators, this makes more sense. So I can just say 4 parts, one for each translator. Okay, and that's all I need to do is just tell it where I want them to go and then how I want to split. So the one I've chosen is split to 4 parts. We're going to click split txlif. Okay, successfully split the file. And now next to my Word file down here at the bottom, you will see that I have part 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I could take part 1, I could give 2, 3, and 4 to my other 3 colleagues, and they can work on them. The way this works, though, is once they're done, you need parts 1 through 4 back, because then you would bring them here. And if you have parts, you would drag the parts in. And this is much like populating uniques. You're just going to run it in the opposite direction. So now instead of split files, you're going to merge files. Okay. So you have to say, where's the original file? So you drag in the parts, which is what I did at the top. You'd have to go look for the original file, which is in this folder. So just browse to that. And then you have some choices. Update the existing file, create a merged file. If you update the existing file, this again can be a little dangerous because I have my original here next to the other 4. If I tell these 4 to update that one, and something, for whatever reason, goes wrong, the original file I used to create the 4 parts has been damaged. So that's generally not the best way to go unless you happen to have created a copy of it. I just made a copy here. So now if I ran the thing to put them back together and this one somehow got ruined, I could just scrap all those files and go back to my original. It's not a problem. Okay, but if you don't want to have to deal with that, you can say you want to create a new merged file. I'll just go ahead and do this one so you can see what happens. And we're going to merge the txlif in a new folder. So let's take 1 through 4 and click on the merge. Okay, successfully merged the 4 files. Now I have a folder up here called merged files, and when I open it, it has the name of the original file with new merged on the end of it. So you definitely know that it is the merged one, and it is definitely separate from my original file, which was this one. Okay. It sounds like a lot of messing around, but it's really worth it if you have this scenario that I'm talking about with an enormous file where you need to share the work. And let me tie this back into something we did earlier. Remember that we created a translation memory on Wordfast Anywhere. So I actually have this key that I put in, which is not showing now, but if I gave that key to some trusted colleagues, they can put that in their Wordfast Anywhere. And let's say I have part 1 and my colleagues have part 2, part 3, part 4. We could all open those files in our own Wordfast Pro. And if we all connect to this same Wordfast Anywhere translation memory, we would be able to benefit from each other's work while working simultaneously. So that's another thing to consider. Just a word of warning about this, though. Remember, I was saying trusted colleagues. If you give this key out and then you later decide that you don't want people to access your stuff anymore, you can click on this revoke button, and what it will do is delete this key, so it won't work anymore. So if out of my 3 trusted colleagues, if one of them was no longer a trusted colleague and I wasn't sure it was a good idea to share with them anymore, I can just revoke that and they won't have access anymore. So that's a fun little tie-in. Okay, so that pretty much covers those. And going back to our original stuff here, there are definitely some other things that you can do in Quick Tools. for example, you can run a trans check on a group of files. So if you've used that inside of a document before, let me just open this short one. No need for a preview at the moment. Okay, so under review, I can click on trans check all. Okay, and it will basically process and give me this information here. Oh, I got a white space problem in 12 segments. I have a repeated word somewhere. And it will show me here errors. So there's an error in this segment. What's wrong with it? It's saying that there's a white space problem because it's supposed to be French, so it wants a non-breaking space. Oops, wrong place. Wants a non-breaking space there to fix it. The thing about this is when you're working in that mode, you're looking at it in a sort of a microscopic view. You're the translator, you're in the text, you're getting your trans checks, you know, kind of segment by segment. Another way to go about it would be that if you are in Quick Tools, you can actually just drag the file in here. Sorry, I lost my file for a second. All right, so we can take this this Word file here, for example. Drop it in there. This is the one that I think it's pseudo translated, right? So it's got some stuff in the target. You pick whatever you want to check. So it already has some pre-established checks here that I had done before, but you can feel free to change these as you feel necessary. I'm going to get a report name called transcheck. It's going to be next to the txlif. So I'll just click on transcheck file, and we'll see what happens here. Okay, so it just pops up immediately a report for me. So this report opened in my browser. This is not inside of Wordfast, but it's a way to get like a big report very quickly on what's going on in my file. Because this isn't really translated, I'm not getting, you know, realistic errors in this case, but at least it's finding, you know, a space problem, which I already discussed with you. So the way I would use this is I have sort of a macroscopic view now. It's like, okay, I can see I have information here I need to deal with. I could have put all 3 files in here as a batch, and it would have run the trans check on all 3 of them, and it would have listed all 3 file names at the top here. And there's actually links. So you can click on these links to jump around. In fact, I think I'll just do that because it will be easier to see what I'm talking about. So let's grab all 3 of those. Getting hard to find my originals now. Okay. All right, so let's do that. We're going to run a trans check on all 3 of those as a batch. I still have it open. 1 second. There we go. Okay, so it's done. And it's easier to explain like this now. You see that there are 3 files. If I wanted to know right away, oh, geez, what's going on in the Excel file? There's 243 errors. I can click on the Excel file. It jumps me to that one specifically, and I can examine the errors that are going on in this file. Okay, so scrolling down, you know, we know it's the French target missing space problem, but, you know, you get the idea. The report also has some other things you can do. You know, you can click some buttons there. There's also links here. Go to report summary. You know, so you can do different things with this, but it's very useful. And if you want to know then how to fix things, you just look at the segment number. So in file, welcome to Word, segment number 8, it's got such and such problem. I can go back here now into my editor, and that one was the Word file. So we'll open the Word file. And in the Word file, I'll go to segment 8. So this one, according to the report, needs the space. So then I will add the space, and it's fixed. Okay, so that's basically how you can do that. And again, the difference between doing this here and doing it inside the software is that you're getting kind of a more of a macroscopic view. It's a step back, and you can do multiple files at the same time and then look at that. If you were somebody who were giving files to other people, again, thinking about colleagues, or maybe you're an LSP and you're going to give these to some other people to work on for you, when you get them back, one thing you could do is you could say, okay, I got these 10 files back from this translator. I want to see, how well they did in general. You can immediately throw all 10 files into TransCheck and just run it and see if there are any problems with the files. So that's a quick way too to see what's going on overall in the files that you've been working on. Okay. Just a couple last quick things here, and then I'll poke in and see if I can get to any questions before we're done, because it looks like we're down to about 12 minutes. The last thing I think we might want to take a quick look at would be the segment changes option. So what this one's going to do is it's going to enable us to get a big report on a specific file. So let's go here and let's do the PowerPoint. Okay, so when you're translating, down at the bottom, there's segment history. And you see that I just added this space into this line, and now it's saying that I added the space. You can see that this has been changed. Again, if you're in here as a translator, you're going to be viewing this kind of as a segment by segment thing. If you go into Quick Tools and you're dealing with other people's files, you can throw it into here and run it this way and just get a quick report. Probably I should close that one to make sure it doesn't block again. So welcome to Word. Oh, this is actually the PowerPoint. Doesn't matter. Okay, we don't need all these extra options. We're just going to run it really quick. Next to original TXLIF, this is a rather simple one to do. Changes summary. Okay. So, all right, segment changes. Here's the report. Okay. So again, you can put in as many files as you want. It would break it down by file, just as we saw with the TransCheck. So I could certainly skip from any one of the three files in this case, or 10 in the case of the other thing I was mentioning. And if anything's been changed since the original translation, it would be listed here. This one I got nothing because I didn't do anything to it. I think it was the Microsoft Word file I just changed, so let's do that one instead. Welcome to Word. Run it on this one and see what we get. Okay, here's the new one. Okay, I know what's happening. The change I made where I added the space, I didn't save it. So there's no recorded change in the file. So that explains what's happening there. Otherwise, it would say that there was one that was changed and it would show the space that I added. So there you go. I think that's sufficient for now. I've been kind of doing this at a pretty fast clip. So what I'm going to do is take a quick peek here and just see if there are any questions I can answer. See, we have some hands up. Okay, here we go. Okay, I have something in here that I don't know is really related to what I'm doing, and I'm having trouble seeing anything else. Let me just pop back out of that 1 second. If you could do me a favor, actually, if you have any questions, maybe just pop them into the chat box really quick, and we'll see where we go for there. If I don't see anything, then I will add some other quick content here. Okay. All right, one quick second here. I'm checking on a couple. Okay, I see that I have a couple hands. Ricardo Ochoa has raised his hand. I believe I unmuted him. So is there any way that you can try your mic there, Ricardo?
Let me see. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Okay, so what was your question?
My question was, you went very fast through the process of chaining different files, and I would find that useful. So can you repeat where I would order that to happen and using quick tools on the regular editor?
Yes, I can. So if you, let me put my screen back up here. Okay. So in the regular editor, if you're just in the project files view, so, you know, on the top level, you have your project list, and then you have your files in the open project. You can select the files, and then there's a button here that says chain files. So you just click on that, and then it will open those files as a single file. Okay?
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yeah, and then to unchain them?
To unchain them, you simply close the file, and that's it. So it's a lot simpler than it appears. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can grab a couple more questions. If you have more, Ricardo, I'll come back.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so how about Veronica? Can Veronica?
Hi, Jamie, how are you?
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, so my question, I typed it in there, but just to check, I find that I really don't use the quick tools as much, and I thought that the uniques, the extract uniques and populate uniques would be very useful to me. My question was, once you do that, and so you translate the file that has less segments, you're finished with it, then you populate it to the other one, and then what? Then do you reopen it back in the normal project and clean it?
That's correct. That's correct. So if you extract the uniques, it creates a separate file, and that just has uniques in it. So when you translate that, you have to put those back into the original file or files, and that's what the populate is for. So once you've repopulated, then you would need to open those and finalize whatever you would normally do.
Okay, so then you would normally, go through the short file and finalize, proofread, whatever you have to do, and then when you're done, then you repopulate, and then you clean it up, and then you have the final file, right?
Right, because in theory, when you've done the uniques file, those are all the segments in all the files that you extracted from. So there shouldn't be any more work to do. And if you finalize then the uniques, as you said, when you populate it back, it's done. The only thing you would need to do, just as you always have to do with these kind of tools, is probably quickly open the original files just to make sure the stuff went back in there like it's supposed to. There's always a tiny chance of some weird error that happens, so it's always good to check and not trust it 100%. But I'm not telling you that to make you worry. I'm just, No,
I get it. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I mean, as always, sometimes something can go wrong, but okay, great.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next person.
Thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm not very familiar with doing the reports that you showed kind of at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So what would be very helpful for me is knowing so if I have multiple documents that have repeated segments between them,
right?
If I could figure out what my final true word count is, removing the repeated segments. So basically all unique segments, but I want to know word count, not the number of segments.
Okay, so I think I still have, I might have to run another one here while I'm talking to you. Let's run one of these files for an analysis really quick. Let's see, let's put the PowerPoint in there. And I'll just run it so we can see what it tells us. The information you want should be in that report that you get. It's just a matter, I think, of understanding what it's talking about, because there's a lot of numbers in there.
Yeah.
Okay. I have an Excel that's separate, and this is the temporary one that pops up. But in effect, if you look here where it says total, so this line is giving you the real actual stuff. So 532 is the total word count regardless of any repetitions that are in there. So up at the top, you see it has 6 repetitions, and then there are 6 fuzzy matches, and then a total of 520 words at no match. So that's basically how you arrive at that information. So if you're needing it for billing and you just want a total word count, that's the number you want.
So this total does, and well, how would this look like if you had multiple documents though?
Okay, let's run one more, and then I got to move on to another question too, because I don't want to use up the whole time here. Okay, I'm going to run this. We'll just do 2. Here we go. Hopefully it's faster that way.
So assuming that there may be repeated segments like between the 2 documents.
Right. Since you're drawing attention to this, I'm going to point one thing out here. Let me move this progress bar out of the way. There is this funky setting that a lot of people ask about when they're looking at stats, calculate internal fuzzy matches. And people are like, what does that mean exactly? That's an interesting setting where if you have repetitions that are not exactly the same, let's say you have the sentence, I am going to the store, and then you have another sentence that says, I am going to the store tomorrow. You can see that those are almost a repetition of each other, but there's that one word difference on the end. So the internal fuzzy matches, based on the percentage that you choose there, the percentage of similarity, it's set at 75. It may catch I'm going to the store tomorrow as a repetition, because theoretically all you would need to do is translate that one little extra piece of information. So it comes out in those stats, not as a true total repetition. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Cool.
So that's good to know too. This one's taking a little bit. So while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and find out the next question, and then I'll discuss the difference between files in just a second. Okay. All right. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing correctly, but Godrat, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Thanks very much. It was a perfect presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question, but I don't know if you're the right person to ask this question or not. Just imagine that I have done a translation and I'm going to send this TXL file to a reviewer who doesn't know how to use CAT tool, but that person is going to review the translation and I'm going to import it back to the CAT tool. What am I supposed to do?
Okay, perfect. So what you've done is you've asked about the final little piece in Quick Tools that I skipped over because it's one of the ones that more people know about, but I'll be happy to show that in just a second. So the way you're going to do that is you're going to use bilingual export and bilingual import. And as soon as my Wordfast frees up, I'll show that also. Okay.
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and put you back on the mute there, and I'll take my last question. And once I answer these final 3 questions, then it looks like we're out of time. Okay. I'm going to pick up Jonas next, but this just finished. So the question was, how do you tell the difference between totals and each specific file? I put 2 in this time, and you can see there's a summary, which is the total of both files. So both files would be this word count. And if I want the specific file, in this case, the Excel, This is the word count for the Excel. And this one here is the word count for the PowerPoint. That's how you see that. And this is just the overview stats. If you go back in here, it should have created also some stats. See, I'm losing myself in here a little bit. I think it's this one. There it is. So you'll get the stats in whatever report you chose. I chose Excel, but it could be a PDF or CSV or whatever. You have the summary at the top, just like I showed you in the quick overview, the Excel, and then the PowerPoint. So that's how you would tell the files apart from each other. Okay, so moving to the next item very quickly, because I'm going a little bit over, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. If you wanted to send a file to a colleague who can't really review inside of Wordfast, you would take a translated file. So let's take this Excel TXLIF. And under bilingual export of quick tools, you have some options here. So you have bilingual review export. That's the main one you would want to use. But there's another interesting one in here, should that be something you're into. There's also a bilingual review export for Wordfast Classic. So if you have a colleague who's using Wordfast Classic, you can also make an export for them. But I'm going to stick to the one that can be used by anyone. I'm not going to change any of the settings here. I'm just going to leave them default. And then what we're going to do is we're going to place the exported file next to the original one. So this is the Excel TXLIF. I'm going to export. And so it should pop up here in just a second as a Word file. Here it is. Okay, so you get a Word file, and anybody could work on this. And the only real rules is that they need to stick to the target table cell. So I can put, I'm actually overwriting the entire translation, but let's say I were actually reviewing this and I go, okay, there's a spelling error here. Let me remove these two letters. You can see that it says that I deleted these two letters, you know, and it's in a track changes view, so you can see that. This is basically what they would do. They would just go through and they would read the source segment, read the target segment, make any changes they need. Okay, so I changed number 16 and what was the other one? Number 3, I think. Okay, so I'm going to save this. So I'm your colleague working on this right now using Microsoft Word, and then I'm going to send it back to you. When you get it back, you're going to put the Word file in here instead. Sorry, I need to get my screen correct here. There it is. I'm going to drag this in. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong one. Bilingual import. I'm in the wrong page. Here we go. Drag it in here. Okay. And it wants to know where's the original. So I'm going to have to go browse for it now. And let's just grab this path here. Okay. And that's the folder that has the original in it. And then we're going to import. Okay, so first of all, when you re-import from your colleague, it's going to tell you an overview of what happened. So it's showing the changes that I made. If I go open that file now, it's most likely this one because I just made a new one. Okay, let's go into this view. See, it's got a separate name, so it didn't accidentally overwrite the original. And you can see line 3, it's listed as there being a change because I did something to it. And then the other one was line 16, and there's the more stuff here. So my changes have carried into here, and the report, you know, shows me what happened to it specifically. So that's basically how you can work with someone who's on the outside. Okay, so it's a matter of exporting with bilingual export and then importing with the bilingual import. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to take this last question here. I think it was Jonas who was waiting. And then I'm going to shut us down. Okay, you're on, Jonas. Looks like your mic's on.
Yeah. But
All right, perfect.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. Sorry about that. So my question, you were talking about the linked files, that when you link them, you're actually working in one big file.
Yeah.
My question is, so when you're working there, it's creating also the TM and glossaries, right? Or is it creating different glossaries, just one?
So the way I have it set up right now, I didn't actually create a project because I was doing everything in the quick tools.
Okay.
When I drug these files in, I opened them in what's called the quick project. So you can see there's nothing here. If I want to actually have a translation memory and a glossary attached, then I need to formally create the project at that point. So I would create one. And here I would create a translation memory or add one if I have one already. So for example, I could click add remote, and from here I could attach myself to that Wordfast Anywhere one I mentioned earlier, or I can just create a new local one. And you have to tell it where you want it to go and what the languages are and all of that. And if you want a glossary, this is where you would put that in also. You can, again, create one local. You can add one you already have, or you can pick one up from Wordfast Anywhere also. There's another option to do that from Wordfast Anywhere. So once you have those attached and you actually add the files to the file list, and the files would go over here, you would want your source files like this. You create the project. And then when you're in there, you can chain those files together and you would be able to apply the TM and the glossary together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm working in one big one, but then when I get out, the TMs goes to the separate documents that I had it changed.
Yeah. So the TM is always going to be, it exists outside the project. So it doesn't have to be tied just to this project. So the one that I had in Wordfast Anywhere, which I think I lost here. Let me see something. Yeah. Oh, I deleted it, so I can't use it anymore anyway. It was something I did earlier. Let me just create a local one here really fast for this example, and then we're going to wrap up. So I'm going to call this local TM. I can put it on my desktop if I want. Just set it here. Okay. That's actually a glossary. Create a local TM here. Put that on my desktop. Okay, and then I have these two files. I'm going to open it up now. It's called chained because that's what we're going to do once we open it. So this is the more formal process, as I said, of creating a project. You see it's in the list now. This will stay here permanently until I remove the project. And once I go in here, these two files are stuck in this project, and I can chain them together like this and work on them. So if I typed a translation here, that goes into my TM. So I went ahead and committed that. So now if I go back, and if you look at the bottom now, it's showing the translation memory has logged that. And if I put a a term in there, okay, the terms will show up on the bottom right, and those will exist throughout this project. But the thing is, it doesn't matter. This project doesn't matter in terms of the TM and glossary if I want to use them elsewhere. So if I went and created another new project, one of the cool things I can do is I can say reuse a project, and it will copy the settings I had from that one. And you can see it already has local TM attached, and it already has local glossary attached. And then I just put some new files in, and it's a separate project, but it's using the same resources. If you want to get those manually, you can create the project, and then you can click on add local TM, and then you would go pick local TM and select it. And oops, I loaded a glossary instead. Here we go, local TM. And you can put it in manually like that too. But that TM and glossary can be carried around indefinitely with any number of projects. So there's an easy way to get it, and there's a manual way to get it. So does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think my question is, like, if I had the two files separate And when I link, because what I'm understanding is like when you link and you create that TM and the glossary, it's for both documents. So if I want to just work with one, is that being updated as well, or I have to use the linked TM?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So the TM, first of all, is just saving the info that we're putting in there. So that's only one element. The other element is how do you want to connect these two? So if I open the Excel by itself, like this, okay, I'm trying to wrap up here. If I translate here, let's just grab this translation really quick. Okay, so if this is translated and I save this to the TM, and then I close this file and I go open the PowerPoint file, if the word start is in there, it'll be populated from the translation memory. So I'm not obligated to have them both open at the same time. So that is going to work regardless of whether they're together. The point of having them together is that if the word start occurs 10 times in this file and 10 times in the other file, and I translate it here, all 10 in this file will be translated. But when I close this and go into the other one, all 10 are not translated. So I have to do it as a separate action. However, imagine this scenario. I changed the translation in the second file. So now it says translation 1 instead of just translation. Because the files are not coordinated, I'd have to come back to the Excel and open this segment again so that translation 1 would populate here with all the repetitions. So the point of having both files open together is that if you have those repetitions, anytime you make any adjustment and there's 10 repetitions in one file and 10 in the other file, they're all changed at the same time. So you never have to worry like, oh, did I apply that change I made in file 1 to file 2 in terms of the repetitions.
Okay.
I hope that helps explain why you would want to do that. It's not that easy to explain, but it's a very useful thing you can do. In any case, just to wrap up, we're going to finish right now, but I just want to say that if you work on the files chained, they are working in a coordinated manner. If you open the files at the same time, so I'm not clicking on chain, I'm just going to open both of them. If you do that, then you also are going to have the benefits of them working together because they're two tabs open in the same working area. So this is an equivalent in some ways of sticking them together. They're separate, they're distinct files, but the repetitions in both of them will get hit in a good way. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank everyone for participating in this webinar. I hope you got a lot out of it. It's been my pleasure to serve you today, and we hope to see you at some of the future events, including a happy hour that I will be hosting tomorrow. So thank you very much.